I'm going to share with you a story this morning that goes back generations. A man was going from village to village, from rabbi to rabbi, asking the same question: where can I find God? He was never satisfied with the answers he received, so he would pack his bag and move on to the next village. Some of the rabbis told him, "Pray, my son, and you'll find God." But the man had tried to pray and he could not. And some replied, "Study, my child, and you shall find God." But the studies seemed dry and irrelevant. The more he read, the more confused he became, and the further removed from God he seemed to be. And some rabbis said, "Forget your quest, my child. God is within you." But the man had tried to find God within himself and failed. One day, the man arrived weary and discouraged at a very small village set in the middle of a forest. He went up to a woman who was minding some chickens. She asked whom he could be looking for in such an isolated place. But she did not seem surprised when he told her he was looking for God. She quickly finished her chores and escorted him to the rabbi's house. When he went in, the rabbi was studying. The man waited a moment, but he was impatient to be off to the next village if he could not be satisfied. So he interrupted, "Rabbi, how do I find God?" The rabbi paused, and the man wondered which of the many answers he had already heard the rabbi would give. But the rabbi said simply, "You've come to the right place, my child. God is in this village. Why don't you stay for a few days? You might meet God." The man was puzzled. He did not understand what the rabbi could mean. But the answer was unusual. It intrigued him enough to stay. For 2 or 3 days, he explored every corner. He would ask the villagers where God was that day, but they would only smile and invite him to have a meal with them. Gradually, he got to know them and even helped with some of the village work. Every now and then, by chance, he would see the rabbi, and the rabbi would ask him, "Have you met God yet, my son?" And the man would smile, and sometimes he understood, and sometimes he did not understand. For months, he stayed in the village, and then for years, he became a part of the village life and shared in all the activities. He went to the synagogue on Friday and prayed with the rest of the community. And sometimes he knew why he prayed, and sometimes he did not. And sometimes he really said the prayers, and sometimes only the words. And he would join one of the families for a Friday night meal. And when they talked about God, he was always assured that God was in the village, though no one was quite sure where or when God could be found. Gradually, he too began to believe that God was in the village, though he wasn't quite sure where. He knew, though, that sometimes he had met God. One day, for the first time, the rabbi sought him out and said, "You have met God now, have you not?" And the man said, "Thank you, Rabbi. I think I have. But I'm not sure why I met God or how or when. And why is God only in this village?" The rabbi replied, "God is not a person, my child, or a thing. You cannot meet God in that way. You were so caught up in the question that you could not hear the answers. Now that you can find God, you can return to your village if you wish." So the man went back to his town, and God went with him. And the man prayed and studied and knew that God was with him and within other people. And others sensed that. And sometimes they would ask him, "Where can we find God?" And the man would always answer, "You have come to the right spot. God is in this place." I think this story is such a beautiful reminder for us of the questions that are posed to Jesus in this gospel reading. "Teacher, which commandment of the law is the greatest?" You see, there are some 613 laws or commandments that are found in the Torah, and all are seen as quite possibly equal. And yet Jesus lifts this up as the greatest. "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like unto it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Like the man going from village to village, asking rabbi to rabbi, "Where can I find God?" It finally took him time to set aside the question and just be. And for us in our lives, just to be is sometimes the most difficult thing we can do. There's so many other things that cloud our daily lives, our work, our family, the world. It's all necessary, yes. But it doesn't allow us to just be and find that place where God is present. You see, he ended up finding God because he sat and he stayed for a while. Days, weeks turned into years. And like the rabbi said, God isn't a place or a thing, but it's within all of us. And so when Jesus tells the Pharisees and the Sadducees that they must love God and love their neighbor, it is beyond their understanding. It's beyond what they could possibly imagine that Jesus would say. I found a quote from St. Francis de Sales, a 17th century bishop of Geneva, and he wrote, "You learn to speak by speaking, to study by studying, to run by running, to work by working. And just so you learn to love God and man by loving, being as a mere apprentice, and the very power of love will lead you on to become a master of the art." And so, friends, this is true. In order to love, we must work at that. It just doesn't happen. We have to work at the love of God. We have to work at the love of our neighbor. No one ever said these commandments or rules or laws or covenants are easy. But as the end of this quote says, the very power of love will lead you to become a master of the art. The history of Trinity really is that we are apprentices of Christ, and that we are continually working to better ourselves and being Christ's hands and feet into this world. We all are also apprentices of God's love and Christ's love in this world, and have to continually need to work on that gift and that grace that is so unconditionally bestowed upon us. The Pharisees and the Sadducees tried to trick Jesus by having him answer these questions. And when he answered them this way, they were puzzled and realized they were not going to get any further with Jesus than this answer. And they didn't dare ask him anymore. But I do dare ask you. I dare you to love God more. I dare you to love your neighbor more. I dare you to love the people you don't understand, the people that don't think like you, look like you, vote like you. I dare you. I dare you to love them because you know, if you just sit and be and allow God to come into you, into them, into the place that you are, then you're going to find more than you could possibly imagine. You could find more that connects you to God and the other than you ever thought possible. So I dare you. I dare you in this time when there's so much at stake, when there's so much in our hearts and in our brains and in our lives, I dare you to love God more, and I dare you to love your neighbor. Amen.